Hello everyone, and welcome to my Voidborne Magus Build guide. In this high intelligence build, we will channel the energy of the Voidborne Magus, a master of gravity-infused sorceries. With the Wing of Astel in hand, we will unleash waves of magic and powerful attacks that combine both physical and magic damage. Now, I know obtaining the Wing of Astel might take some time, but fear not, I will also provide you with powerful weapon and gear choices until then, so you can embark on this journey right from the start of the game. So, without any further delay, let's get started. The centerpiece for this build is the Wing of Astel, which is one of the unique curved swords in Elden Ring that deals both physical and magic damage, while the weapon skill Nebula deals only magic damage. It is also a gravity weapon. Gravity weapons like Wing of Astel, Meteoric Ore Blade, and Star Scourge Greatsword deal 20% increased damage against gravity enemies like Alabaster Lord and Falling Star Beast. Wing of Astel heavy attack and weapon skill Nebula are what sets this curved sword apart from other curved swords in the game. The heavy attack is similar to other curved swords, but will also release a wave of magic. Tapping a heavy attack button will release one wave after another, while holding it will release two waves consecutively. These waves deals 100% magic damage, which means it will benefit from magic boost items like Magic Sharding Character and Magic Scorpion Charm, but more importantly, it doesn't cost any FP to use. Wing of Astel heavy attack also deals high poise damage, which can be improved if you use it really close to the target, so both the weapon and the wave of magic hit the enemy at the same time, resulting in more health and poise damage. The downside is that the waves have such short range, so you need to make sure you are close enough or time your attacks as the enemy approaches. While charging a heavy attack, you can press the roll button to quickly cancel the attack and flip backward, slashing your enemy as you do so. I argue the usefulness of such moveset, but it is something you should be aware of. Now let's talk about Nebula. When cast, it releases an arc-shaped cloud of stars that lingers for a short time before exploding, damaging all enemies caught inside. This is particularly effective against group of enemies or large hitbox enemies like dragons because their massive bodies will soak most, if not all, the stars you release, resulting in devastating damage. However, what I really love about the weapon skill, besides its fantastic damage, is how incredibly effective in destroying enemies' boys, leaving them open for more Nebula attacks. It also has a relatively fast cast time and recovery speed, which enables you to release one cloud after another to quickly decimate your enemies. However, you should be aware that Nebula produces a cloud a little further away from the player, and it doesn't explode immediately. So if you decided to get too close to the target and cast Nebula, it will likely miss. This shouldn't be a problem against large targets, but some normal sized enemies will not get caught if they are too close to the player. So always make sure to put some space between you and your enemy when casting Nebula, so they are already caught inside the explosion by the time they approach. To obtain the Wing of Astel, you have to progress Ranni's quest line to the point where you obtain the Finger Slayer Blade from the city of Nokron and hand it over to Ranni, where she will reward you with the Carrion Inverted Statue. You don't need this item, but it will signal you are ready to access the nearby tower, Rena's Rise, and use the portal on the top floor to travel to Ansel River Main. Wing of Astel is located inside a chest on top of ruins guarded by a large enemy with a big head that looks very intimidating, but in fact, these types of enemies have such low poise and are particularly vulnerable to rock sling. Wing of Astel is such a fantastic weapon that you will certainly have a lot of fun using, but unfortunately it will take you some time before you can obtain it. For that purpose, I would like to offer you an early game option until then, and that's the Meteoric Ore Blade. The Meteoric Ore Blade is a katana type weapon that deals both physical and magic damage. Unlike most katanas, it comes with passive hemorrhage build-up. It also has a unique heavy attack compared to other katanas that consists of two powerful downward slashes that can be charged up separately and deal high poise damage. People who play Sakura will easily recognize this attack as it looks identical to the Ishimonji combat art. The weapon skill Gravitas will damage all enemies around you while pulling them closer to you. It also provides you with hyper armor, which makes you more resistant to interruption during the weapon skill animation. Something you should be aware of is that enemies closer to you while plunging your sword into the ground will take more damage from those further away. One useful combo you can perform is cast Gravitas to pull your enemies closer, and then quickly tap heavy attack to cut them down. The Meteoric Ore Blade can be found inside a chest in an underground hole. The entrance is found in the northwest section of Kaled Waypoint ruins. Gravity sorceries in Elden Ring are diverse in damage, in the way that some of them deal 100% magic damage like collapsing stars, Rock Sling deals 100% physical damage, and others deals physical and magic damage like Meteorite of Astel. This can be advantageous since you can benefit from items and spells that boost both physical and magic damage to further boost the potency of these sorceries. First, let's talk about Rock Sling since it is likely the first spell you are going to obtain in your game. When cast, it summons 3 boulders from the ground and hurls them towards your target. And as mentioned earlier, it deals 100% physical damage, which is useful against magic resistant enemies you encountered early in the game, like Queen Renala. It also has a decent range, but not a great one, so if you try casting at very far away enemies, the rocks will fall off before reaching their target. It is also very limited against very close enemies, as 1 or 2 rocks will fail to track your target properly and will likely miss. The main downside of Rock Sling is that if you tried casting it while in tight spaces like narrow corridors, 1 or more boulders will immediately hit the wall, making it extremely ineffective in these scenarios. However, Rock Sling remains one of the best early game sorceries in Elden Ring due to its high damage and how easily it can destroy your enemy's boys. Rock Sling can be found inside a chest in an underground cellar north of the Street of Sages ruins in Ionia Swamp in Caelid. Not so far away, you can find the Meteorite staff on a corpse hanging from a window. This staff will play a crucial role in our build, but more on that later. Next, we have Gravity Well, which fires a single gravitational projectile that pulls enemies closer. It deals 100% magic damage and can also be charged up. You can use Gravity Well to displace enemies on a ledge and put them to fall to their deaths. It also doesn't suffer from some of Rock Sling drawbacks like casting in tight spaces, and has better tracking against elusive enemies. Gravity Well drops from the Lesser Alabaster Lord next to the Water Wheel in Raya Lucaria Academy Graveyard. Collapsing Stars behave exactly like Gravity Well, but deals more damage, and instead of firing a single projectile, it fires multiple smaller ones. Both Collapsing Stars and Gravity Well fit the same role of taking out smaller and weaker enemies quickly, or in situations where Rock Sling is unreliable. In order to obtain Collapsing Stars, you have to defeat Radahn and gain access to the War Dead Catacombs. The spell is located inside a chest on the bottom floor, not so far away from the entrance. Last, but certainly not least, Meteorite and Meteorite of Astel. These 2 spells are what I like to call the get out of jail free card. Every time you are done playing around with an enemy, you start channeling them and call forth destruction and mayhem. They are very situational and particularly effective against large enemies like dragons and golems because they become susceptible to more asteroid attacks. Channeling these spells will quickly drain your FP, so in order to maximize the true potential of these sorceries, you have to use Radiant Hidden Tear in the Flask of Wondrous Physick, which eliminates all FP consumption for 15 seconds after using the flask, allowing you to channel them without having to worry about your FP consumption. Meteorite is cheaper to cast and doesn't shoot as many asteroids as Meteorite of Astel, but don't be fooled, it is still one of the best sorceries you can obtain early in the game. However, these sorceries lock your character in place and you cannot roll or dodge incoming attacks. Meteorite will also rain in the direction your character is facing, so if your enemy moves around or behind you, it loses all value. So be careful when and where you choose to start channeling these sorceries. You can obtain Meteorite after defeating the Onyx Lord in Royal Grave Evergoal. However, you need to clear Carrion Manor before you gain access to this area. Meteorite of Astel can be obtained after defeating Astel, Stars of Darkness, inside Yellow Annex Tunnel in Consecrated Snowfield. During your journey with this build, you will utilize different staves depending on what stage in the game you are and how much intelligence you have. But one staff that will accompany us through the entire journey is the Meteorite staff. You should always have it equipped while casting gravity sorceries since it increases their potency by 30%. That doesn't mean you should cast gravity sorceries with this staff, but just have it equipped so you can utilize that passive damage increase. From 28 to 60 intelligence, you should use the Academy Glintstone staff. It can be farmed from the mages in Raya Lucaria Academy, or rewarded after giving Tops the Academy Glintstone key. After 60 intelligence, you will have to decide between Lusat's staff or Carrion Regal Scepter. Lusat's staff has the highest sorcery scaling but increases FP consumption by 50%. However, I believe it's still the best choice since we are mostly depending on the Wing of Astel for the most part. The second reason is that we are going to utilize Cerulean Hidden Tier in a lot of our fights, so we won't even care about FP consumption in these scenarios. You should consider some important buffs to enhance your gameplay like Terra Magica, which increases all your magic attacks by 35% including Nebula, except for Rock Sling since it only deals physical damage. I was also using Golden Vow to improve all damage done by 15% and damage negation by 10%. Since some of our sources deal a portion of physical damage like Meteorite, use Flame Grant Me Strength to boost the physical damage done by 20% for 30 seconds. To cast this incantation, I was using the Golden Order Seal since it has 0 weight. If you don't want to invest in face, you can use the Stormhawk Spirit Ash instead of Golden Vow. The bird will periodically buff the player's physical damage, stamina damage, and boys damage by 20% for 30 seconds. Be mindful that this buff does not stack with Golden Vow. Likewise, you can farm some materials and craft either Exalted Flesh or Blood Boil Aromatic instead of Flame Grant Me Strength. I was also using Godric's Great Rune, which adds a temporary +5 to all attributes. The talismans we are using for this build are Magic Scorpion Charm to boost all magic damage by 12%, Graven Mass Talisman to increase all Sorceries damage by 8%, Shard of Alexander to boost Nebula damage by 15%. For the last slot, you can either go with Dragoncrest's Great Shield Talisman, which reduces physical damage taken by 20%. You can also use Ritual Sword Talisman to increase all your damage done by 10% when HP is full. Graven's School Talisman increases all Sorceries damage by 4% and can be obtained quite early from Rhylocaria Academy. For the early game, use Radagon's Sword Seal Talisman to meet the requirements for the Meteoric Ore Blade without having to waste any points in strength. For the Flask of Wondrous Physick, use Intelligence Not Crystal Tier, which raises intelligence by +10 for 3 minutes. Magic Shrouding Crack Tier increases all magic damage done by 20% for 3 minutes. In fights against large sluggish enemies like Dragon Lord Brasidusax, I would replace the Intelligence Not Crystal Tier with the Cerulean Hidden Tier to channel Meteorite of Astel without having to worry about my FP consumption. If you have over 70 intelligence, replace the Intelligence Not Crystal Tier with the Stone Barb Crack Tier to improve boys damage done by 30% for 30 seconds. For the armor, I was using the High Glintstone Crown, Lusat's Robe, Radahn's Gauntlets, and the Bull Gold Greaves. I like the look of this set and I feel it fits the aesthetic of this build, but more importantly, it sets our boys to 51, which is ideal for PvE content, so you don't get easily interrupted by most enemies' attacks. High Glintstone Crown also provides +2 to intelligence and strength, which is very important to meet the requirements for the Meteoric Ore Blade and later Lusat's Glintstone Staff. I would like to mention that you can also use Spellblade set, which increases the Wing of Astel weapon skill damage by 2% per piece, up to a maximum of 8% if you wear the entire set. For the early game, I was using the full Battle Mage set that can be obtained from a Battle Mage located on top of a hill that can be easily reached after using Altus Plateau Bridgeway Gate. The ideal starter class for this build is the Astrologer, and if you are interested in an optimized early game route with plenty of useful resources, please check out my early game starter guide. At level 150 you should have around 50 points in Vigor, 30 Mind, 22 Endurance, 17 Dexterity, 68 Intelligence, and 25 Face. 50 Vigor is more than enough since we have a lot of damage reduction coming from Armor, Golden Vow Incantation, and Dragoncrest's Great Shield Talisman if you choose to use it. 30 Mind is quite enough for this build, but if you decided to push this over 150, invest until you have around 38 or 40. 22 Endurance to match the equipment load for this build. You can reduce your equipment load if you decided not to use the Bull Goat Greaves and reinvest those points into Mind or Intelligence. We don't need to invest any points in Strength thanks to High Glintstone Crown and Radagon's Sword Seal Talisman. 17 Dexterity to be able to use Wing of Astel Curved Sword. 68 Intelligence with the High Glintstone Crown and Intelligence Not Crystal Tier to reach the soft cap for Lusat's Staff, which is 80. 25 Face to be able to cast Golden Vow and Flame Grant Me Strength. You can always use Stormhawk Spirit Ash as well as Exalted Flesh or Blood Boil Aromatic and reinvest those points into Mind and Intelligence instead. If you are curious about what attributes, gear, and spells I was using at level 50, 80, and 125, you can find build templates at these levels in the description. This thus brings this guide to an end. Thank you so much for joining me on the journey through the Voidborne Magus Build guide. I truly hope you found this guide helpful and informative. If you enjoyed it as much as I did, don't forget to give this video a like and leave a comment below. Your feedback is immensely valuable and it motivates me to create even better content for you. Once again, thanks for watching and have a great day.